Hello everyone, welcome to Zaref Game Dev. In this video, we are going to create the input for our game. So it's just going to get directly from the mouse position, then it will record the starting grid, and whenever we release the mouse position, we'll record the ending grid. And depending on wherever ending grid is, we'll change its input. And if it is a valid input, then we'll have our block or the cell moving. So let's see how we are going to code it up. So currently we have our scene to be created depending on the level. So this is our first level and this is our second level. And now what we need to do is get the input. So for the input, we are going to get it inside our update function of the uh, game manager. So let's create an update function and let's hide our spawner because it's done, and inside our game functions we'll also hide it currently, and we'll need a couple of helper functions but we'll create it afterwards. So our current game state is set it to input, so the first thing we are going to check when getting the input, if our current game state is not input state, then we'll just directly return, so we don't need to do anything. So let's check if the current game state is not equal to input, then we'll directly return, no need to do anything else. Let's first create a vector3 for the input pose and a vector2int for the current clicked pose. And first we'll check if input dot get mouse button down of 0, then we'll set up our input position, which is going to be camera dot main dot screen to world point of our input dot mouse position. And depending on this input position, we'll set the current click pose to be a new vector, and here we'll set it to an integer, our input pause dot x, and again cast it to an integer, our input pause dot y. So that is our mouse button of 0, and after that we'll check if and we'll set our start click grid. We also need to create those variables, so let's see what variables we are going to need. So let's just create all of them. So we have the title image, the win image, and next we'll need a serialized field for the private audio clip. And the first audio clip we are going to use is the move clip, then it's going to be our update clip, and the final win clip and our lose clip. So and after that we have our level dictionary and our cell dictionary, the cell prefab, all the three integers, current game state, and below our current game state we are going to have a private vector to int of our start click grid and our end click grid, and we'll have a private float of state delay, so how much delay we are going to have for getting the input. And we'll also need a couple more variables, but we'll do it when we have the methods. So what we'll do is we'll set the start click grid to be the current click pose, and else if input dot get mouse button up of 0, Then similarly, we'll set our end click grid to our current clicked pose. So when our end click grid is going to be the current click pose, then our end click grid is going to be our end click grid minus start click grid. And and do we set it to be normalized? No, we need to get, and what we need to get, the direction. So for the end click grid minus start click grid, we need to get the direction. So let's create more functions. So this region is going to be for the helper functions, and hashtag and region, and our get direction is going to be private, and it's going to return an integer for our direction. And what we are going to pass is just a vector2int, and it's going to be our, what do we call it as, let's just call it direction, or maybe offset. So it's good to have good naming. And let's create a v2int result is equals to new. And what we are first going to check, if mathf dot abs of offset dot x is greater than mathf dot abs of offset dot y. So if our x is greater than y, that means we need to set the integer to x or y. Then result is going to be uh, result. Why did we set it to new? We can just, yeah, we need to, result is going to be new, and here, so our x is greater than, will pass offset dot x is greater than 0, then will pass 1, else will pass -1. And else, then what we'll do is we'll do the similar thing, but instead of offset dot x, we'll use offset dot y, and here we'll use 0, and the next 0 will remove it. So this is going to return our offsetted direction. So let's use return result, and if we try to check this inside our main menu scene, so we should be able to get our grid's position. And after that, getting our grid position, what we'll do is we'll check for the mouse. So let's set the current game state to be the animation game state, and we'll calculate the mouse. So it's going to be calculate mouse, and again it's going to be a new function. So it is good, our GameObject methods are done. Now before our spawner, we are going to create a new region for our mouse, and hashtag will end our region, and here we'll create our private void calculate mouse. And inside our calculate mouse, what we are just going to do is the function is so much big. check result. Yep, well, this function is going to be bigger. So if we are clicking anything, let's first do audio manager dot instance dot play sound, and we'll pass our move clip. And after that, uh, inside our calculate moves, first we'll check if it is a valid position. So valid start pose. We'll do it later, but let's set the current game state to be the input. So there are not many problems. So what we did is we get the input, we got the starting and the ending position, and inside our uh, let's use a debug.log so we can see debug.log, and we'll say start pause to be start click grid, and debug.log our offset to be end click grid. So let's go inside Unity and let's check if it is working. So currently we don't have the audio clips, so let's add our audio clips to our game manager. So let's go inside our gameplay scenes and let's add all of our audio clips. So the first is the lows, the second one is the mode, then we have the update, and finally the win. Now we are not going to start it from here. We will go inside our main menu and we'll load our first, and as you can see it was a 0 -1 and the position was 1, and if we pass it here it was 0 0 and the direction was 0 and 1, and if we pass it here direction was 1 and 0, direction is -1 and 0. So we can get our directions. Now, how we will change our state is first we will check if our current direction is valid. So the starting grid should have a valid position, the ending grid should also have a valid position, and our starting grid's color should not be -1, which is the empty. And let's just have these conditions calculate one by one. So our input and our awake functions are working, so we'll hide them. Now let's also add a region for our variables, hashtag region for our variables, and we'll use hashtag and region so we can hide our variables and you can see what our current function is. So first thing, instead of directly setting the start position, we are going to check if our current position is valid. So how we'll check if our current position is valid? So if the start click grid will pass that value, and we'll check if it is less than 0 or greater than the number of row count, or maybe the column is out of bounds, so we'll create one more helper function for it. So let's go inside our helper functions and we have get direction. So we'll create one more helper function to get the public bool is valid pause, and here we'll pass the vector to int, and it's going to be our pause, and we'll return if pause.x is greater than current row object dot row. So if it is greater than the amount of row, not greater, equal to. or pos dot x is less than 0, then it is an invalid position, or our pos dot y is less than 0, then it is an invalid position, or finally our pos dot y is greater than current level object dot column, and we also need to use greater than equal to, so it's going to return a valid position. Now we are going to need a few more functions, so instead of public bool, let's make it private, and both of the functions are going to be just private void play update sound, and here we'll just use audio manager dot instance dot play sound, and we are going to pass our update clip, and one more function which is going to be a enumerator, so private enumerator switch state after delay. So instead of directly calling our function, what we will do is we'll have it return after a delay. So I will do is while our state delay is greater than 0f, we'll yield return null, and before that we'll decrease the state delay by the time dot delta time amount. So, and after that we'll set our current game state to be our input. So instead of directly calling our enumerator, we'll set up the state delay and we'll call our switch state after delay. So we have our calculate moves. So let's first check if our current position is valid. Game win, game lose, show win, show lose. Spawn, check result. So only thing we need to do if is valid pose, and we just need to pass the start click grid. So if it is a valid position, that we are not going to do anything, but if it is an invalid position, then we'll just directly set our current game state to state delay equal to 0f, and we'll call the start coroutine and not 0f. Yeah, let's just use the start coroutine, and what we'll do is we'll start our switch state after delay coroutine and we'll return it. And the next thing we are going to check if our end position is also valid. So let's first, so if it is a valid position, so let's create a cell and we'll call it current clicked cell, and it's going to be the cell dictionary for our start click grid, and the hmm so it moves are going to be 0, so we'll check if is valid position of our start click grid plus end click grid, or if it is an invalid position, or our current clicked cell dot current data or cell data dot moves is less than, if it is greater than 0, and if we use not, it's going to be not greater than 0. Then, so if it is not greater than 0, similarly, we are going to not do anything. We'll copy our this function and we'll pass it here. We need to get the current clicked cell, so that's why we're using, but if our starting position is not valid, it's going to throw an error. So that's why we're creating a different condition. So we'll check if it has valid and pose and it has moves. So if both of them are true, then next thing we need to check if invalid same color. If our start click grid and our end click grid are of the same color, then we don't need to move. So cell and click cell is going to be cell's dictionary for the start click grid plus the end clicked grid. And we'll check if the current clicked cell dot cell data dot color is equals to end clicked cell dot cell data dot color. So similarly, if both are equal, then we'll pass the state delay to be 0f and we'll start the coroutine for switch state after delay and we'll return. So this is another condition. And afterwards, if all of them is true, that means there is an end clicked cell which is of the different color, or that is empty. Its color will be -1. We are only checking if the starting has not -1 or it has any moves. So if it is -1, it's already going to have the number of moves set to 0. Then what we'll do is we'll move for our empty cell. So we are not able to check any of the condition now, but we should be able to do it later. So when we want to move, so n-clicked cell dot cell data dot color is equals to -1. That means it's empty. So what we are going to do if it's empty, first we'll get the current clicked cell dot cell data dot color and will decrease its move count. It already had move count, so we can decrease it. And after that, we'll start the coroutine for the current clicked cell dot update moves. So I think we already used our update moves, but it was not public. So we need to set our it to be public. So it decreased. Where is our cell? Not private, it needs to be public. So we have our update moves. So it is going to like show the cell after a delay. And after we have our updated moves, what we are going to do is let's first get our position. So it is going to be n-clicked cell dot cell data dot grid position, and we'll set our end clicked cell dot cell data dot grid position to be the current clicked cell dot cell data dot grid position. We can directly use the start pose, but it doesn't matter. And correct clicked cell's grid position is going to be our temporary grid position. And after we have changed it, we need to call the coroutine for moving our cells. So it's going to be current clicked cell dot move to pause, which is again going to be an enumerator and we need as coroutine. And similarly, our end clicked cell dot move to pause. So both our functions are not created, but will create it now. So let's go inside our cell. So our audio manager is finished. Our cell, we have our update moves function. Now we need to create our move to pause function, which is again going to be an public enumerator. So let's create a public enumerator and we'll call it move to pause. And what it's going to do is first we'll get the start position and it's going to be transform dot position, and end position it's going to be new, and current data cell data dot grid pause dot x, and we'll add 0.5f. Similarly, cell data dot grid pause dot y, and we'll add 0.5f. And after that we'll create a speed, which is going to be end pose minus start pose divided by the animation time, which is simply going to be, let's also add our animation time. So float animation time is going to be constants dot values dot animation time, and we'll divide it by animation time. And after that we'll also create end time, and inside our end time we'll first set it to 0, and while our end time is less than our animation time, we'll increase our transform dot position to be equal to speed multiplied by time dot delta time, and we'll increase our end time by time dot delta time, and we'll return a null. So it should be able to move our cell, and at the end we'll set the transform dot position to be equal to the end position. And our input was working fine and our logic was also correct, and inside our game manager we created a coroutine to move both of them. So the only thing that's remaining is to change the references in the dictionary. Rename current click the cell to unclick the cell. So after that we created move to pause. Hmm. Let's update our dictionary. So inside our moves, when we are moving, we'll go cell dictionary for the start click grid, and start click grid is going to be the end click the cell, and cells dictionary for our start click grid plus our end click grid, it's going to be our start click the cell. What was its name? Current click the cell. And after that we'll switch state after delay. So we'll set state delay because there's an animation. It is going to have some value, not instantly change the value, and we'll call the start coroutine, and we'll call the switch state after delay, and this is just going to check it and we'll return it, and that should be it. Now it should be able to have our moves. So let's go inside Unity, and the only move we are able to do is currently inside our second stage, which has a movement. So let's hit play, and there may or may be problems. So let's go inside our second stage. So the point is start pose is 0 and 1, and our offset is 1 and 0. So they are not moving. Why are they not moving? Because maybe we didn't. If is invalid start pose. So debug.log is working. Let's go inside Visual Studio and let's see why are they not moving. So inside our GameObject methods, we are calling our calculate moves. We are playing the sound. So it is a valid position. Start click grid. So let's use debug.log valid start pose, and I think there may be problem with our delay. Helper function switch state after delay input, so it is also good. So let's first check if we are clicking an invalid position. So we are just checking every function one by one, so it shows all of our errors. So if we click an invalid position, it should show our invalid. The given key 03 was not found in the dictionary. Key not found. So if it was an invalid position, then also it checked. So audio manager dot instance dot play sound, and we returned it. If is valid position of start click grid, our calculate moves is not working. Get direction. So where's the error? Game manager script inside our calculate moves. Start click grid. We directly return it if it is not a valid position for our start click grid. So there should be some problem with our helper function, and if it is greater than or so let's see why our helper function is working not working. So we returned uh it was an we just need to use not. So if this condition is false, then we need it to. So let's go inside Visual Studio, and if any of this condition failed, so there was just a problem with the not. We forgot to add not at the beginning. So let's go inside Unity, and now we should be able to, maybe we should be able to move our object. So let's go, nothing's going to happen on the first screen. So let's start post, doesn't matter. Let's go inside the 2 and let's restart the scene. So it moved to the right, it moved to the top, and it moved to the bottom. And so for now, it is currently moving. So the point is, it is moving, and switch state after delay is also working. And we call the coroutine for the current click cell on the update moves, and the point was instead of color we need to set it to count. So let's go inside Visual Studio, and here we set the color. Instead of color we need to decrease the amount of moves, so the amount of moves were not decreased. So there are always some typo problems, and when you are doing it again it always happens. So let's play the game again and let's see if we are able to move our currently clicked cell. So for now, as you can see, nothing is happening because our position is not valid and it's going to be able to move in any of the directions. So in the next video, we are going to create the function to calculate the most. So what would happen if there is some cell at the right? So it needs to change that cell's color and also need to change all of the cell's color in its neighbor, which has the like same color for our neighboring cell. So that was it for this video, and in this video you learn like how to have the animations and changing the game states, checking different conditions, so testing all of the different conditions step by step. So if you watched till now, thank you guys for watching and see you guys in the next video.